Well, how's it going, folks? Brooks Gibbs here. So thankful that you're joining me for brooksgibbslive.com. Hopefully, my audio did not just bust your eardrums. I think I'm not being too loud. I think I got everything set up correctly. So, I got a question for you today on this live video show. It's what lessons are you learning during this lockdown? We've had enough time to process now. We know a lot more about this terrible thing we call the coronavirus. We're observing how other people are reacting to it. Some manic, scared, fearful, not even going on their balcony for fresh air for fear that they might get the virus. And then you've got other people on the other spectrum not worrying about it at all. Frustrated that the government shut everything down, the economy's crashing. We've used this no other than like a severe flu, and monitoring Sweden, of course, to see how they're responding, which is quite different than most of the other 180 countries around the world. So what lessons are you learning? Are you enjoying that, hey, we don't have to live this rat race, fast pace, insane, life that we're living, and it's good to slow down, Little House on the Prairie style, where we're home a lot more with the family, not too far away? Or have you learned that homeschool is a great alternative to public school, and my kids get their school done within 2 or 3 hours a day? What lessons are you learning? Whether you're a parent or a kid, you can give me a call at brooksgibbslive.com. I've been living in this house in Florida for about 3 years. We moved from Tennessee. And I'll tell you a lesson I've learned while being on lockdown for the last month, I guess it's been. I have a pond behind my house that I didn't even know there were a bunch of fish in it. And so this weekend I decided to get real worms and throw the line out and drag my kayak back there. And sure enough, man, I'm catching all kinds of fat panfish. And this pond is really isolated. Like, most of the public doesn't have access to it. And so I am blessed to the max. And it pours into a thing called Alligator Lake. I'm in Florida. Yes, there's alligators. And there's alligators in my pond in my backyard as well. But it's surrounded by 100 acres of a bird sanctuary. And I decided to take my kiddos and hike as far as we could through the thicket. And man, did we discover we discovered another pond, actually 2 extra ponds. We discovered access to the lake, which was pretty amazing. It has just been a fantastic time of learning how to enjoy my own backyard, which is full of life. Turtles, birds, fish of all kinds. And the spiders and bugs aren't too bad. They're not overwhelming like in Tennessee. But it has been a great, pause for us as a family. And I fished this morning. In fact, I'm kind of excited, kind of psyched out of my mind, now that I've discovered, hey, you've got a paradise in your backyard and you're not even enjoying it, Brooks. So this morning I had my devotions on my kayak while I was fishing, catching a bunch of fish. I love it when I find a school of them, because then I feel like a really good fisherman, because I keep throwing the worm right in the same spot. So what lessons have you learned during this quarantine time? I'd love to hear directly from you. You could go to the website, brooksgibbslive.com, and that'll bring you right here into my studio, which is awesome. Also, if you have a comment or a question, make sure you just type it right here in the comment section. I'm monitoring those the best that I can right here. Some people don't want to call in, video call, and so they can just leave a message. That's fine. But I hope you guys are doing well. And I'd like to hear really the lessons that you or your children have been learning through this whole lockdown and how it's been going. Unfortunately, there's been sort of a dark side to this whole thing. This whole lockdown is a petri dish for vices. And so finally, many states have approved support groups like Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous as essential services. They didn't at first, but through enough outcry, they've allowed these kind of groups to keep meeting on a regular basis. But from what I'm reading, Domestic violence has gone up 30%. And I imagine with that is probably other vices like alcohol and drugs and other things to try to cope with the stresses. So it's not very pretty. This is the unintended negative consequences is what sociologists call it. The unintended negative, in this case, consequences to good intentions. I have discovered that when mankind tries to fix a problem, he often makes it worse. Because we don't know the future, we don't know the consequences to our actions. We can only learn from history, which most of us don't read. And that's really, really sad. I'll tell you what I am over. I'm over the hysteria. I'd like that to end. I'm sort of a resilience guy, as you know, and so I'm a firm believer in being strong and not being entitled to a life without pain. And that seems to be what's driving, in my opinion, a lot of the hysteria. At first, I tried to take a positive spin on this whole thing. I tried to think, maybe people are just valuing human life so much that they're willing to allow the stock market to crash. They're valuing life so much they're willing to give up their own freedoms and their liberties to move around and to work. And so if it's worth saving one life, as a governor of New York said, all this shutdown and all this economic crisis would have been worth it. And of course, by smarter people than me, have been processing those types of statements and have said, you know what, that's ridiculous. I thought it was ridiculous right when I heard it. I mean, it sounds good that how valuable is a life? Is one life worth trillions of dollars? Well, yes, of course, it's priceless. But what we don't realize and don't think about is when we shut things down to save one life, we actually kill other lives. Again, suicide rate going up, domestic violence going up, vices going up. It's a real challenge. And so I love having these conversations with kids. I really encourage you to have mature conversations even with your 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and older year-old kiddos to say, is this the best thing? And what bad could come of this and what good can come of this? Of course, I believe good can also come out of this. People are real. I've gotten to know a lot more neighbors than I ever have because I'm taking 2-3 walks a day. And so that's been very cool. I've actually been more social in my neighborhood than I have ever been before. We keep a distance. Don't have a heart attack. We keep our little 6-foot distance. But man, we've had some great conversations with neighbors we've never even met until this whole quarantine thing. Also, I've been around my kids a lot more, so I've been able to observe some challenges that they have and work on mitigating those challenges. So Jill and I, my wife and I, have been parenting closer through this whole thing. Instead of me busy at work or traveling the country speaking, I'm home. And so that's, of course, put any family issues front and center. Which leads me to a final comment. And again, you could call me right at brooksgibbslive.com. No one's called yet. Lines are open. I think everything's working. brooksgibbslive.com. And you guys are commenting here, which is awesome. Let me read a couple. Jeff said, it's a great reminder that I'm not in control. Only God can provide. Jeff is a fellow speaker and friend of mine, Jeff Veely. And a lot of people don't realize the live events has been hit hard. We think about the restaurants and we think about the Uber drivers, but what about the industries that depend on mass gatherings, like Jeff and me? That's a real challenge. But Jeff says, hey, I know that one of God's names is provider. And so I take comfort in that, he says, and I agree. Even though our wives say, you're the provider, hopefully we've married a wife, and he has. I was at his wedding. Who knows? It's not the husband that provides, but ultimately God that provides, which is cool. Holly says, doing e-learning has been okay, but overwhelming, especially when some parents can't control their kids, like the ones that have to be at work still. I can save a ton of money, but not, oh, hold on, I got to expand this thing. I can save a ton of money, but not driving. Doing home workouts isn't easy or isn't terrible. A lot of people watch the like yoga YouTube videos. A lot of parents are having their kids start their day by watching a workout, like okay, or like almost like home PE or something like that. That's what our family does, which is pretty cool. There's some really neat ones too that are free online. But Holly continues by saying, doing home workouts isn't terrible, although mentally it's hard to not be able to go to the gym and get away from home. It's been nice to spend more time with family and figure out ways to cope with each other and not make each other go insane. My family is learning to be very patient during this time. And that's cool. You know what patience is? Another word for it is long-suffering. Another word for long-suffering is the ability to suffer long without blowing your lid, without being overly frustrated or getting angry. So that is what patience is. And doctors need patience. That's just a little side note. Sorry for the pun. The fear from COVID, Elizabeth says, how fast previously healthy people struggle to breathe. She says she's a nurse. So she's seen firsthand how hard it is to breathe. This is a respiratory disease, an illness. And so that's pretty scary. But it's not COVID that kills people, it's pneumonia that kills them, ultimately. It's not the COVID virus. That's why I think antibiotics can be useful to treat pneumonia as early as possible so that infection doesn't set in and spread and take down your breathing. All right, who else said something? We got Jamie says, thanks for doing this. It's nice to get your perspective on all of this. And my wife said, who is your audience? Are you drawing questions or just spewing thoughts? Leave it to the wifey to keep it real. To answer, honey, I'm taking comments from people online, and I'm opening up my lines, and no one's called me at brooksgibbslive.com. And so I'm just giving thoughts as well. So it's all of the above. It's everything. But I really love what kids have been learning, by the way, everyone. I've been asking kids this online. What have you learned? And one girl who went to public school says, I can learn, I can homeschool. I thought I could never do it. I never knew what it was like. But now I'm part of the homeschool group. That was Riley. I thought that was very insightful. And she all of a sudden she's just a middle schooler. But she thought, man, how soon can I get high school over with? Could I end it by my sophomore year? And can I get my first 2 years of associate's degree by the time I'm a senior in high school by doing kind of like a college credit high school? So she's really awakened her mind to new opportunities. And then other kids are saying, I really miss friends. However, I'm talking to people more than I've ever talked to them before, which is cool, via FaceTime or Snapchat or Zoom or whatever they use, Skype. So that's neat. We're also catching up on reading and watching old movies. Thank goodness Disney Plus came out right before this whole thing. Man, Disney Plus came out, and it came out strong because that has helped a lot of kiddos. But hopefully you've not been just using the video as a babysitter for your kids, but actually been creative in helping them find things to do. But I believe it was Holly who said something very interesting in this comment. She mentioned that some parents are still working and their kids are at home and there's no one really overseeing the kiddos. And so I was at a friend's house just yesterday, just dropping some things off, and I said, this kid came in covered in dirt in his living room, just covered in dirt. I'm like, dude, you are so dirty. What in the world? He says, yeah, I was playing. I said, who is this kid? Oh, he's a neighbor's kid. I said, he just comes into your house filthy like that? And so we started giving him wipes to wipe down and stuff like that. And really found out very quickly that, yeah, he's being neglected and his parents are nowhere in sight and they have to continue to work and he's not doing school. And I think we're going to see a lot of that. Parents who still have to work cannot care for the kids at home, and the kids are not self-disciplined enough to actually, do their schooling. Well, I would like to know if there's any kids out there that have a good routine and have learned a little bit of self-discipline during this time. You can give me a call. Talk to me directly right here in my studio, brooksgibbslive.com. You can do that. My kids watch me doing this show. They're hovering over. And would love to hear from you. brooksgibbslive.com. You can give me a call or make a comment right here in the comment section of the video. I'm going to play this little clip, which is a snippet of the homeschool assembly that I've offered for free, and it gives me a chance to take a drink. Drink my sparkling water with a splash of pineapple, just to be clear. That's what I'm drinking. Check out Homeschool Assembly, a couple minute break, and I'll be back. Everybody say, don't get upset. I love my job. I get to help teach students how to get someone to stop being mean. I teach students how to systematically remove mean people from their life legally without any violence. There are 3 reasons why people are mean to you. You can see on the emojis behind me that maybe they're trying to be funny and you're the butt of the joke. They're being mean to you because they want you to get upset. And always, when it comes to humor, someone has to be the butt of the joke. And when you're the butt of the joke, maybe you're not liking that. But the second reason why someone might be mean to you is because they're hurt by you. You did something or said something, and now they're angry with you. They have the desire for revenge. You realize you've got a victim you're dealing with. Maybe the third reason why people are mean to you is because they like to control you. They love to see you suffer. They want to have psychological power over you, and they love doing that. But the same truth for all 3 is don't get upset. Be emotionally resilient. Everybody say resilience. If you're emotionally resilient, if you're mentally tough, if you're cognitively strong, if you have emotional intelligence to know why she's being mean and how to stop her, then she cannot mess with you. Check 1, 2. Sorry, guys, my mic was off. Didn't mean to freak you out. Brooks Gibbs here. Sorry. Brooks Gibbs. I got to do everything. Do you realize that? I've got to run the cameras, the little switcher. I've got to do the audio. I've got all this gear. I got to play guitar sometimes when the video's going just to keep myself not bored. So it's a lot to do. I read. There's all kinds of stuff I'm doing over here. And I'm checking the comments. Anyways, I do have a caller. Finally. I'm so glad. Get ready, Andrew. I'm about to bring you in. 450,000 people are watching this broadcast. Did you know that, Andrew? No, that's a lie. It's not true. Andrew, how are you, buddy?
Doing good. It's good to see you. Speak to you, finally.
Thank you, man. Where are you calling from?
Pottstown, Pennsylvania, which is like an hour north of Philadelphia.
Okay, yeah. Pottstown. Yeah. Well, what's on your mind? And have we met before or been in correspondence?
No, never met yet.
Okay,
no.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I commented on your videos, but no, we've never interacted. So, I'm a counselor, and so I figured I'd just bring up one of my cases, maybe get some feedback from you.
Oh, man, this makes me really happy. Thank you for that. Yeah, hit me.
Sure. Maybe about a month ago, I started with this family. The client was their 13-year-old son. And they came in saying that he has anger issues, he'd have outbursts, and getting to talk with him, it was really mostly him getting these outbursts of anger because his family likes to joke around a lot, and he was finding himself as the butt of a lot of the jokes at home. And, I guess they like to be real sarcastic, and he's 13, doesn't quite get sarcasm yet. And so they would call him things like literal Larry or whatever, just to make fun of him being very literal. And they didn't realize how it was affecting him. And so he would get angry, burst out loud, run up to his bedroom stuff. And in the session, as they're just, I guess it's been going on for years. And as he was sharing how he was feeling about it, and the mom and dad just felt terrible. They had he really opened up just like a few days prior to the session. And then in the session, as they were hearing how he felt, really, they felt terrible. So after the session on their own, they went back home. They talked to their other kids, said, "Okay, things are going to change. We're not going to be making fun of him anymore." And like the next session that comes in, it's like it's a whole new family. He's like, it's so much better now. So I've actually been using your videos, especially stuff that you're going over with Quaden. And I was helping to explain some things like I love the emoji meter. I was using that with him. The different reasons why people may be mean. And so going over the joking, and sometimes joking can be insults, and how to distinguish between them. Because I'm like, okay, it's really cool right now that your family is laying off the jokes. And that's awesome. It's giving me like a break from all that. And he's popular in school. He's got good friends. He's not bullied in school. So he's only at home where he's dealing with any of this conflict. So I was like, but the reality is, at some point, you're going to be made fun of again, or you're going to experience some sort of difficulty. So let's take advantage of this time where you're getting a little bit of a break from everything, and try to prepare ourselves. I'm not sure. Are you hearing that too?
No.
Maybe some static.
I think maybe God is speaking to you right now.
It's sounding a little static right now. So I was just trying to go over a lot of the resilience stuff to maybe help lay more of a foundation in case at some point his family slips up again, or he ends up in a friendship where that person uses jokes with him. So what would you say? Where would you go next with a case like that? And I also, one of my concerns is I wouldn't want the family to be scared of joking with him.
Right.
Because they're worried about the outbursts. So as much as they're trying to be kind right now, I also don't want them to be on eggshells around him. I feel like they can't joke with him. I want him to get to that point where he can take a joke.
Totally. So Andrew, you're right on, man, because yes, it helps if the activating event goes away. In this case, it was the parents using sarcasm with him as the target. They were insulting him, exaggerating maybe flaws for a punchline. And so that was the activating event that ultimately triggered this emotional reaction or consequence. And so when that activating event goes away, it seems like everything's okay, but you are smart enough to know it's just a matter of time before the next activating event comes and this kid goes back and resorts to the hypersensitivity, the outburst of anger, and things like this. So 100%, we have to cure him if possible. It's really a cooperative with him. He cures himself, but we can assist him with learning to actually love to be the target of the aggression. And that was your goal. And the emoji meter that you used, you saw me use with Quaden, is great, right? Because here's how you go from mad to sad to met to glad. Let me see if I can show the audience what we're talking about here. I think I've got the emoji meter. And I'll put it here a little. It's a little better of a design. 3, 2, 1. And why not just throw this in there too? Oh, what the heck. Not to waste time. You're like, what? That doesn't even look right.
There we go.
So, anywho, this is much better. Sorry, man. Boom. I'm the producer. I'm the post-production. I'm the pre-production. I'm the editor. I'm the switcher guy. I'm the audio dude.
I do it all.
Thanks to everyone patient. So the emoji meter is a tool that's used to help children connect their feelings with their thinking. And in the emoji meter, we've got a guy who's very mad, which is the red zone. But notice his fists are very demanding, and that represents his thinking. The sad guy, which is sort of the orange zone, his desiring hands give away his thinking. Please, 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 please. Of course, the emotional result is tears. And then you've got the mad guy who's in the yellow, and he's like, I don't care if you make fun of me. Make fun of me if you want. And he's totally unfazed. And that's great. That's where we want him to be ultimately. If he could, it'd be the green zone, which would be, sweet, you want to make fun of me? Way to go. And that's kind of what I was talking about. But for
Yeah.
him to go from mad to sad to mid to glad, he's got to have some thinking processes. And so Andrew's correct in trying to help him have a green or resilient mindset next time he's a target. And so, let me ask you a couple questions about him that may be hindering his ability to move across the emoji meter. What would you say he is struggling with the most? Perfectionism or approval?
I would say probably the approval.
Approval.
So, yeah, it doesn't seem like he's as performance based on things, but mostly want to make sure. Well, at least as far as we've gone, we're still pretty early in the therapy process, so I haven't gone too deep.
That's a question
into
you want to ask.
issues.
Oftentimes they're conjoined twins.
Yeah.
Like for Quaden, who was he had dwarfism. His was perfectionism. I don't have dwarfism. I must not have dwarfism. I must be a normal-sized man, eventually, or a boy.
Yeah.
And so that's performance, performance or approval. Performance means I must be the ideal. I must be perfect. Approval is so that I can receive approval from important people. Mm-hmm. So they are conjoined twins. What were
See, now is with his parents, I'm leaning toward the approval because so much not just his parents, but also his older sisters were joining in on the jokes, so he was feeling very much left out. Like he was the one who wasn't in on the jokes, and he was the butt of the jokes. So even if most of them were probably benign or not as harsh, but he took it that way.
But I was kind of wondering, like, what were the jokes about? Was it about something in particular, the way he speaks? I can't remember what you said.
It was mostly like, say, other
literal.
people were joking. Yeah, he would take things literal, and so he didn't understand either being facetious or sarcastic. So it might not even be jokes that were targeted at him originally, or just comments people would make. He wouldn't get it, and then they would make fun of how he couldn't get things.
So here's where I might see the performance in that. He may wish that he was more humor savvy, social savvy, picking up on things. This is what you see a lot with kids on the spectrum. And he's not on the spectrum?
No,
okay. So autism is one thing. Yeah, no. So, they take things very literal a lot of times, and they don't understand, innuendos or pick up on the invisible things like facial cues and stuff. So the autistic kid really struggles with this. And so I must be savvy. That would be a question I would ask him. Do you desire to be because what they're pointing out is got a little bit of truth in it, and you believe that they're either disappointed in you and they don't think that you are who you should be, which is the approval, or you're hyper insecure about the fact that you don't have the sense to read people and understand meaning behind phrases or reading in between the lines of conversations. Which one is it? Ultimately, you want him to, what I love Dr. Albert Ellis says, is in small incremental stages, face his fear. If it was an elevator, we would say, put your toe in, okay, put your arm in. If he was afraid of elevators, okay, put your head in and step out. Put your whole body in and step out. Like, you have no choice but to face the very thing that you're afraid of, right? So you become comfortable with it. All right, now, what's the worst that could happen, by the way? Well, I could die. Well, you have to have rational conversation with him. And so I'm a real firm believer, once we see a weakness in a child, we have to expose them to the very thing that they're afraid of, get to the bottom of why they're afraid of it, to figure out if there's a perfectionistic mindset or an approval addiction. Rationally talk them. Your parents love you unconditionally. They approve of you completely. There's nothing you can do that would make them disown you. They might be disappointed sometimes when you do something really make a mistake, but the fact that you can't read people or you're literal and you can't get humor or jokes, they're not disappointed in you. Reassuring him that his fear is unfounded for approval. But I think what you might discover is that how old is he again?
13.
Yeah, so he may be disappointed in who he is becoming. That he just lacks You know how a lot of us have a lot of just a few strengths, but we have like 100 weaknesses,
Hmm.
and we didn't necessarily pick the personality we have. We just have the personality. Some force beyond us and before us wove together our nature. And part of a child when they're at that 13-year-old age, I have a 13-year-old, I know this, is that I must be different. I must be different. That goes back to perfectionism or performance. No, dude, you got to give up the grip and embrace who you are and not stop wishing you were someone different. And so you just may struggle with the ability to have humor. There's a lot of cognitive conversations, but ultimately, and I'll shut up here in a second, when Albert Ellis did this experiment with some of his students who were struggling with humor, they were struggling with being the butt of the joke. He challenged them to take a banana and tie a string to it and walk down the streets of New York City without saying a thing, but just walking a banana. And people would look at them and think, what's wrong with that guy? And what was interesting, he found out that most people didn't even care. You know, because in New York City, you just see all kinds of crazy all
Yeah,
the time.
really. You can get away with it there if any place.
Right. You know, but then there are other humiliating situations, scenarios that kids need to put themselves in if they're sensitive to that. And you could do in incremental stages.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, as his counselor, what is something that he could do that would put him in the very thing that he fears?
Well, I could see maybe him getting to the point where he could joke about himself. So at least build up toward, all right, joke about yourself, then doing more of the jokes around his family so maybe they can participate in the joking of himself. Because I wouldn't want to see, like I said, I wouldn't want to see his family be so scared to joke with him that all jokes are just he's left out now of the joking. And maybe he gets to the point where like I actually want to participate in the joking because now I've built up, or I want to start developing my resilience. And you're not going to do that in isolation and in a place of safety. So um,
I would love
I
that.
think with
Maybe
the
one thing
sure
he,
is the foundation of knowing that his parents accept him and his family accepts him no matter what. With that foundation, then he can start to participate in some of the jokes and use the family as an arena for developing more strengths. That's what I would love to see happen at some point.
yeah, I like that. I think challenging him to have a family comedy night where he has to write self-deprecating humor
Mm,
for like 5 jokes, and there'd be a big party afterwards. And if you would, especially since you're in a therapeutic context, they're looking for takeaways. You know, what can
hmm
we do to help not just change the family dynamic where we're not making him a target, but on the other end, working on his emotional trigger, not just the activating event, but the emotional trigger or consequence. And so I think one great thing is I want you to do a 5-minute comedic bit about self-deprecating humor and help him write that and find the funny in it and
Yeah.
then have him deliver it to you. That will do more for him therapeutically than talk therapy. It's an activity that he can engage, and you guys can even go to joke websites. You know, like if he's super tall, I'm so tall, dot dot dot, or whatever,
hmm
and then work on it, and that would be a real progress for him. So you're absolutely right, ultimately, of trying to get to the root of the problem. My suggestion is there's some perfectionism or desire to perform perfectly. He's not comfortable in his own skin and needs to yield to the personality he has and not demand he has a different personality, or he's going to torture himself and be in denial every time someone points it out. And then also work on the approval thing. Your parents love you and they're not disappointed in you that your personality has shaped to be someone who's not very witty. That's okay. That's a rare gift. Real wit is sort of not a common gift. It's a great gift.
hmm
It's a great talent and personality. It can be learned, but it's like singing. Some people just have it, and others, it takes a lot of work to sound good.
Yep.
So, right on. Bravo to you, dude.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
So,
And your school counselor or therapeutic counselor private
Um,
practice?
I'm all sorts of places. I counsel at University of Valley Forge and like 3 other private practices. So I'm all over the place. So, yeah,
And are you familiar with Dr. Albert Ellis, rational emotive behavioral therapy?
yeah. And
Yeah.
I've sort of am a very integrative. So I was trained in psychodynamic therapy, actually by an neo-Freudian, so it's almost classical psychoanalyst.
Yeah.
But I've integrated a lot from CBT and existential therapy and reality therapy. So I try to fit things to match the client's particular needs.
Yeah.
So,
What do you find a tool that you keep going back to normally? And don't say my videos, but I'm saying like, what do you use in your practice that you find yourself repeating all the time?
oh my gosh, there are certain soapboxes I get on, or there's certain topics when I reach them, I just will use them as educational experiences. Or as you can notice, I'm a big comic book guy, so
Mm-hmm.
and I'm an artist, so I've made some counseling comics. So I've done like a handout about emotions to help explain emotions, what they're for. Because
Ah, that's awesome.
when I was interning, I was doing code therapy with a therapist who had a client with reactive attachment disorder.
Hmm.
And with them, they never really had attachment
Is it
early
a
in
foster
infancy.
child?
Sort of. He was living with his aunt and uncle, and they were
Okay.
adopting him. And so he was raised by his dad. His mom died when he was a baby. So and his dad had his own emotional issues, so he really didn't know how to care for him. So he was being neglected, and so CYS came in. So as we were working with him, I was like, he doesn't really understand emotions. Well, let me create something that would be at his level. It's a comic book style. Here's explaining emotions. I made another one for compassionate communication, for how to share honestly with people, stick to the facts, then share your emotion,
Hmm.
and then connect it to your needs, and then make a request and not a demand. So those are some topics that'll come up, and I use the handouts to illustrate those. And I'll give them to kids or adults. I got people who tell me, "Oh, I got your handouts hanging on my fridge." So like, I
Yeah.
love using those opportunities to explain things, especially when it comes to emotions like anger. And
Hmm.
I really try to help guide people to understand how anger is a secondary emotion that
Secondary.
rises
Yeah.
up to protect us from other emotions we find so intolerable, like fear
That's
or
right.
pain or shame. So when we feel those, like in a split instant, we feel the anger rise up to protect us against the other emotion and the threat that's coming against us that's causing those. So I try to help people as they're getting in touch with their emotions. I'm like, okay, now figure out what might be below that anger. And I use a lot of psychodynamic exercises to help people, especially adults, go back earlier in life to figure out, well, where was that first experience of that
Mm-hmm.
pain or shame? And that's the primary emotion that's coming up to the present. And what was it
And
you
once you
needed as a child?
target that, and once you uncover that, that's where the Freudian, I guess,
Yeah.
work, or neo-Freudian, as you put it. Once you target where that came from, first of all, why does that help?
Well, it's good for diagnostic reasons. So, at least with helping people identify root issues. That's where I sort of diverged then after that from like the psychoanalysts, because the way they then treat that going forward is just a lot of like intensive individual therapy, sometimes multiple times a week, and for years. And because just having them repeat, just free associate, get their thoughts and feelings out there. And a lot of therapists nowadays, they find the psychodynamic perspective useful in helping people understand themselves, but then they'll use more cognitive behavioral approaches and more of a relational approach to help them deal with those things in the present.
That's a great
So,
point.
so what we'll do then is, okay, when you identify where was maybe one of the most significant experiences of this same emotion in your childhood, and then what was it you needed at that time? What were you hoping mom and dad would say to you or do to you? How can you then meet that same need as an adult in the present? What do you need to hear? Like, I needed to hear that I was loved, that everything's gonna be okay. Well, we can't go back in time. Okay, we
Mm.
can't go and repeat and have a do-over. But how can you tell yourself now? How can you remind yourself now of how you're loved? I'm working with a client right now who she's in a because of this quarantine. She's stuck at home. She's 50 years old and she's living with her parents right now, and her parents are they're just so difficult to live with. And
Hmm.
so it's bringing up. She's just constantly being re-triggered from all of her anger and all the pain from when she was a child living with her parents, and now she's back in that environment, just stuck there. She already was living there before because she was almost homeless. So and now she's definitely stuck there.
Hmm.
So as she's been journaling, she's been identifying those earlier emotions and realizing, okay, what do I need to tell myself? I need to tell myself how I am loved, that there are others who love me. And because she's also a Christian, I'm able to remind her of how God loves her.
Hmm.
And even when everyone else might not be able to connect with her at that moment, that she can have that foundation of God's love that is certain. So
I love
we
that.
can try
There's
and
a
meet those
verse.
needs in the present.
There's a verse in Psalm 27. It says, uh, "Though my father and mother forsake me, you will always receive me." That's Psalm
Mm-hmm.
27:10. I love that. Now that's interesting because on one hand you get to the original trigger as far back as you can,
Mm-hmm.
but then you find a and then you say, okay, now that that same feeling of whatever that feeling is, anger or abandonment or rejection or despair or whatever it uh, is triggered, and you have those same feelings that seem to be connected somehow to that far
Oh yeah.
back event or series of events, you're kind of like, I want to use the word reframing, but that's a whole nother thing. That's where you could say, see it in a completely different light of how it might be advantageous to me. And that's a great technique.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, it's our belief system about that. Yes, that is bad and that happened. But that doesn't mean I'm fully rejected by everybody. And if my mother and father forsake me, God will always receive me. And faith
Mm-hmm.
is such a key for so many people. And it's sad to me that a lot of people of faith who say they have faith don't know what Scripture says or whatever, and they don't study uh,
Mm-hmm.
to show themselves approved, not ashamed, but rightly dividing the word of truth. So
Right.
I'm always shocked when I see a neurotic person of faith. I'm
Yeah.
like,
Well,
how
as
is
a
that even
Christian
possible?
therapist, yeah, that's one of my other big soapboxes or topics I love to get into is when I really help people understand what their identity in Christ is.
Yeah.
And I always say there's a lot of Christians who are crazy
Mm-hmm.
because I use this as an example. One of my old jobs was I was in the intake department of a major counseling practice here on the East Coast, and so basically I was like the customer service rep for his mental health practice. And one time I got on the phone, and it was a lady calling, not for herself. She wasn't a client. She was calling to get directions for her friend. She was going to drive her friend to the appointment, and went like a normal phone call. At the end of the call, though, she stops, and I can't even do her voice because she had like this thick Eastern European accent. And she's like, "Oh, by the way, before we go, you're Andrew, but now you're awesome Andrew, and I'm Happy Hannah, a real life fairy godmother." And she tried to tell me bippity boppity boo, say a wish 10 times, and it'll come true. And I'm like, this wasn't even a client. She was gonna be driving a friend to an appointment.
Oh
I
man.
was trying to keep it together. When we were done, I was laughing. I use that to tell people when you believe you're something you're not, or when you don't believe you are something that you are, that's crazy. We would all agree that's crazy
Yeah.
nowadays. That's controversial, but and I use
Right.
that to explain how, as believers, when we still believe we're this worthless, hopeless sinner who is just has no right to feel good about themselves, we're believing a lie about who we are in Christ. And
Mm.
the reason so many Christians still struggle in a sin area is because in the moment when you're sinning, you're forgetting who you are, that
Mm.
you are a new creation, that you are now a slave to righteousness and not a slave to fear. And
Mm.
so integrating that knowledge of your new identity in Christ is so much a key. And having it
Here,
reinforced in community.
here's here's what's amazing. Take atheism and Albert Ellis, I mentioned before, rational motive behavioral therapy, the pioneer of cognitive behavioral therapy. He believed the end of therapy was unconditional self-acceptance, unconditional others' acceptance, and unconditional life acceptance. And so the whole goal, the finish line of counseling therapy is to bring the client to be comfortable with who they are and how they are, and not demanding to be any different, and embracing life as it is and seeing the good and the bad. It's really unconditional acceptance for self, others, and life. And man, I've done a lot of world religion studies, and I look at Christianity and I look at the rest that it provides the weary heart, and I say that is the faith system that I have discovered to be the only provider of unconditional acceptance.
Yeah.
Nothing you have to do anymore. It has been done for you. Just receive it and live it and enjoy it. What a wonderful gift we have, not just to help people psychologically with secular hacks, mind hacks, cognitive hacks to help them feel better about themselves, but to also have that added element of Judeo-Christian value truth, which paints a picture, really describes a loving, unconditionally loving God. So you're a great resource for a lot of people, and I'm glad you have both to dip from, the psychology and theology, and when you could use both, brilliant.
Yep. Yeah, I wouldn't have any other way. And I work in one of my practices is a secular practice, but I've been blessed to have a bunch of clients there who are Christians. So I'm like, well, then I'm not going to hide my faith with them. And even with some of my non-Christian clients, sometimes the conversation opens up. And so as they're open to, I can share a little bit. Well, here's what gives me my certainty, especially in the midst of this pandemic. And that's because a lot of people, they're not going to pastors these days. When they're looking for life advice, they're going to counselors. And so as a Christian counselor, I look at it as oftentimes my job is a mission field. I'm not there to proselytize, but at times if the conversation leads that way and they're looking for what I think or how I'm coping with this pandemic and the quarantine stuff, then that gives me an opportunity to share honestly with them.
I think the reason why they don't go to pastors like they used to is because pastors are quite ignorant of mental health. They just are. And psychology has often been looked down upon. And I remember writing a paper in my first Psych 101 class where I talked about psychology, theology. And I made a statement that I heard before, but it says, in my conviction is the Bible's all true, but not all truth is in the Bible. And we could find wisdom and truth in other places. Not that it will contradict the truth of Scripture, but science tells you how things work. The Bible tells you what's right and wrong, and who God is and who you are and what the expectations are for that relationship. And you can use science or psychology, if you will, and theology as two lenses make one in sight. It's like an enhanced understanding. And the more I learn in social science, the more my faith in Scripture is actually enhanced. And my favorite saying of this is, as scientists are climbing the mountain of knowledge, they reach the summit only to realize theologians have been sitting there the whole time.
Yeah, well, really, because the social sciences are really soft sciences. Yeah. And I taught intro to psych in college a few years ago, and I was really trying to drill that home because a lot of these students, they grew up indoctrinated in the government school program, so they think it's a science like any other hard science. Right. They're like, it's a little different. I'm like, it's almost really dangerous for you guys to learn psychology, take this intro to psych course right now in your freshman year without having already taken some philosophy and theology courses. And so I was really explaining, because psychology is a combination of research, scientific data, qualitative data, of philosophy, theology. Like, you need to have some grasp of those things before you can actually understand psychology well. So I was trying to integrate aspects of those things into my course. Some got with, some understood, some didn't.
Well, and a psychologist is a PhD, a doctorate of philosophy. So that's
well, now they got the PsyD as well. So.
Yeah.
But yes, you need to have a knowledge of, because all right, you got to try to understand people.
Yeah.
Well, based on what theory? What perspective of people?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're not just understanding them like many of the behaviorists were trying to come at it just with cold hard facts but you need to have some sort of philosophical understanding of what makes life worth living, what gives people value. Those are philosophical questions science can't answer.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And value of forgiveness, things that have been around long before.
oh yeah, yeah.
The science of psychology, the social sciences. Um, before psychology was philosophy, before philosophy was theology, before theology was God.
Yep.
So I'm proud of you, Andrew, and I'm glad that you're following me. We have a kindred spirit. You're doing great work. I want to check out your comics. Is there a website or something we can see any of them?
You know what? I don't have a site for my comics. You got email. I can send you them. But you can also check out some of my stuff. I also do videos. I have a YouTube channel, Psycho Bible. So all one word, Psycho Bible. It's babbling about psychology and theology. So check out some of my content on there.
Instead of Psycho Babble,
yeah,
it's Psycho Bible.
I used to do a WordPress blog, but then I was like, you know what? I consume way more media on YouTube. So I'm not going to switch from writing my blog to doing videos.
That's it?
Yes, right there.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
You've got a subscriber now, one extra one. I'll check out your stuff. And obviously the conversation steered in this direction, so I could tell.
It goes a few places. I have a background of working with people with a lot of sexual struggles. Mm. So that's one of the my main interest on that channel as well. So
good.
But
thank you for helping people.
Let me know what you think. Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Thanks for all the work you do.
Yes.
It's been a huge resource. I forget when I discovered you a few years ago, and then I really just started digging into your material. So I got a playlist on my channel of some of your content that I share with people.
Well, I appreciate you calling, man, and thank you for showing my videos to the kids you serve. That encourages me a lot. I'll keep it up. You too.
Yes, thanks.
All right.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Take care.
That was Andrew. Andrew Rodriguez. He didn't look Hispanic, did he? But he may be somewhere down the line. I'm going to check out his YouTube channel, Psycho Bible. I like that. It's like Psycho Babble or Babbling Brooks. That's what I thought my comedy tour should be called if I ever had a comedy tour. Babbling Brooks. Wouldn't that be a good name? Well, guys, I'm Brooks Gibbs. This has been Monday edition. It was a tough Monday, wasn't it? It's like Groundhog Monday. That's what it feels like. Groundhog Monday edition. And during my interview with Andrew, I had an ant crawl right across my glasses because I was fishing today in the woods this morning. And that actually made me really happy because it just reminded me that I spent some time in nature. I hope you are too. This whole respiratory disease issue has a cure, and of course we can wash our hands, but we need fresh air. So I think it's quite foolish to tell people to stay indoors and breathe recycled air. Go outdoors. You can still keep your distance from folks, but go outdoors and breathe as deep as you can the fresh air. LA has the freshest air it's ever had in a century. All the smog has been lifted from that city of angels. What an amazing season we're living in. Unforgettable moment. It is nothing but a test. That's what this season's all about. Do you have the emotional strength to endure an upset in your schedule and finances? Do you have the creativity to keep your kids busy and to have fun and enjoy the outdoors? Do you have the gratitude to be thankful for what you have and not be angry about what you don't have? And do you have the love for your neighbor to try to stay healthy for them and to help them out when needed? There's all kinds of tests going on right now. Your character, our kids' character, are being tested to the max. How healthy are we? Let's pass this test. Let's make changes where we need to make changes. And because the economy is going to come back, I think, like a slingshot. We're going to be busier as if this thing never happened in a matter of a month. I really do believe that. We still may have some social distancing, restrictions here and there. Starbucks may not let us go inside for another month. I don't know. But what I do know is life is going to get back to normal, and it's going to be blazing fast. So enjoy this time, and may you think of what is most important: God, family, and be grateful for those two. God bless you guys. My name is Brooks Gibbs. Thanks for watching this edition of Brooks Gibbs Live. Andrew, thank you for being my caller. It made the hour fly.